The contrast between Wehrmacht and American medical procedures proved particularly disorienting. German field hospitals had prioritized returning men to combat even when inadequately treated. American processing included comprehensive vaccination and immediate treatment of wounds, and in cases requiring surgery, the same priority was given to American personnel. Military records confirm that 8,212 German prisoners received emergency dental treatment at Remagen alone during April 1945. Major Thomas Williams, medical officer at Remagen, documented the psychological impact. German prisoners appear bewildered by treatment. Many verify they were told Americans extracted gold fillings from prisoners. When receiving dental care, several have asked if we will take their fillings as trophies. The transition from European holding facilities to American soil involved naval transport across the Atlantic. Navy records confirm that German prisoners received standardized meals aboard transport ships, 3,400 calories daily, including fresh bread, baked on board, coffee with real sugar and powdered milk, and meat at 2 meals daily. These rations matched those served to American crew members, exceeding in both quantity and quality what German troops had received even at the height of the Reich's power. U.S. General W.P. Richardson's log from May 1945 recorded serving hot coffee with sugar and powdered milk to 3,065 German prisoners immediately after boarding. The ship's mess prepared 9,195 meals daily, identical for crew and prisoners. According to medical inspections conducted upon arrival, prisoners gained an average of 4.2 pounds during the 12-day crossing. The first Americans encountered by most prisoners were military police, processing specialists, and medical personnel, trained to maintain professional demeanor regardless of personal feelings. Technical Sergeant David Wilson, processing clerk at Fort Patrick Henry, Virginia, recalled in a 1975 interview, "Many had killed Americans, perhaps our friends. But our job wasn't revenge. We processed them according to the Geneva Conventions, which meant feeding them properly, providing medical care, and treating them as human beings." This processing experience, being documented, photographed, examined, delosed, vaccinated, fed and treated for medical conditions, contradicted all German expectations. Each procedure represented not punishment, but standardized humane treatment. The dissonance created was profound. As one captured officer noted in a letter partially censored but preserved in military archives, "They feed us better than our own army did." This cannot be the prelude to execution. Perhaps everything we were told was censored. May 1945. Camp Blanding, Florida. The German prisoners filed into the mess hall, still expecting the abundance to end. 6 weeks after capture, they continued to hoard bread rolls in footlockers, insurance against the starvation they had been told awaited them. Instead, that evening, they encountered something extraordinary: thick cuts of beef steak, sizzling on metal trays, served with potatoes, gravy, and vegetables. The camp kitchens operated with industrial efficiency. Fort Blanding's records show the main mess hall contained 12 gas ranges, 4 walk-in refrigerators, and equipment to feed 3,000 men in under 2 hours. The kitchen staff included both American personnel and German prisoners, working in shifts to prepare 3 hot meals daily, a system that exceeded the food service infrastructure of many German military installations. Quartermaster records documented the daily rations allocated to prisoner camps: meat, 6 ounces daily, fresh vegetables, 8 ounces, bread, 12 ounces, coffee, with sugar and milk, seasonal fruits, and butter or margarine. These rations averaged 3,400 calories daily, exceeding what German civilians received weekly in besieged Berlin. The contrast created an uncomfortable reality. German soldiers ate better in American captivity than their families did in German freedom. The steak dinner became emblematic of this disparity. American camps typically served beef twice weekly, including 1 steak dinner. The portions, 6 to 8 ounces per man, exceeded what most Germans had seen in years. Former Luftwaffe pilot Otto Becker later wrote, "The first time they served steak, I thought it must be a special occasion. When it appeared again the following week, I realized this was simply how Americans ate." This seemed impossible: meat without ration cards, served to prisoners. The psychological impact of this meat abundance operated at multiple levels. For enlisted men, it contradicted years of Nazi propaganda about American resource scarcity. For officers, it challenged core narratives about German efficiency and superiority. Hauptmann Wilhelm Rieter noted in a censored letter, "They waste more food in one meal than we received in a week on the Eastern Front. Yet their supply system never falters. How could our intelligence have been so wrong?" Military records confirm that Camp Blanding served beef steaks every Thursday evening. The consistency itself proved disorienting. While German supply systems had collapsed under Allied bombing, American camps maintained uninterrupted food deliveries, demonstrating logistical capabilities that contradicted everything prisoners had been taught about American industrial weakness. The contrast extended beyond quantity to preparation methods. German military kitchens had typically served communal meals from large pots, efficient but impersonal. American camps offered individual portions, often with choices. Camp Blanding's records show that Thursday dinner included options: steak with gravy or steak with onions. This individualization of meals, the ability to accommodate preferences even for prisoners, demonstrated a prosperity beyond German comprehension. Red Cross Inspector Werner Schmidt documented prisoner reactions after visiting 23 camps in summer 1945. German POWs consistently expressed disbelief at food provisions. Many suspect a temporary display for inspection visits. When informed that these meals represent standard American military rations, most express skepticism. The psychological adjustment is significant. They must reconcile this abundance with years of propaganda about American scarcity. This reconciliation process happened meal by meal, steak by steak. Each serving of meat reinforced the fundamental contradiction between expectation and reality. The men who had expected execution found themselves confronting a more existential challenge, their entire worldview, carefully constructed through years of propaganda, dissolving with each bite of American abundance. The steak served to prisoners contained more than protein, it carried the first seeds of ideological transformation. June 1945, Camp Hearne, Texas. The metal canister of the ice cream maker spun lazily in its wooden bucket, surrounded by ice and rock salt. German prisoners watched with fascination as the American mess sergeant cranked the handle, explaining that the simple combination of cream, sugar, eggs and vanilla inside would transform into something extraordinary. When he finally opened the canister 30 minutes later, removing the paddle coated with frozen cream, several prisoners stepped back in disbelief. Ice cream, a luxury vanished from German civilian life since 1941, was being prepared for enemy prisoners on an ordinary Tuesday afternoon. This frozen dessert became the most powerful symbol of American abundance. Camp records documented that 94% of German prisoners had not tasted ice cream since before the war. For many younger soldiers, American prison camps provided their first ever experience with this frozen luxury. The impact transcended mere pleasure. It represented an entirely different relationship between state and citizen, between scarcity and abundance. American ice cream production reached staggering levels during wartime. While German dairy production collapsed under bombing and fuel shortages, American manufacturers produced 380 million gallons of ice cream in 1944 alone, more than 20 quarts for every American citizen. Military procurement records confirm that standard Army mess equipment included ice cream makers at the company level, each capable of producing 5 gallons per batch. Camp Hearne requisitioned 120 gallons weekly during the summer months, served to both guards and prisoners. The psychological dissonance created by ice cream proved particularly acute. Feldwebel Heinrich Müller, former Hitler youth leader, documented his struggle in a diary confiscated during a security inspection. "They make ice cream here 3 times weekly. The Americans consider this normal. Children eat it daily." This contradiction requires explanation. How can a nation supposedly fighting for survival waste precious dairy and sugar to create a food that exists purely for pleasure? Either their resources truly are limitless, or everything we were told about America was lies. This crisis of confidence extended beyond individual prisoners to collective Nazi ideology. The Reich had justified wartime privation as a necessary sacrifice for ultimate victory. American ice cream demonstrated a fundamentally different possibility: abundance during conflict. Records from the camp psychology program documented growing ideological fractures among prisoners after 3 months in American camps. The report classified 47% as severely disillusioned with National Socialism, citing food abundance as the primary factor in changed perspectives. The varieties of ice cream further challenged German assumptions. Camp Hern's PX store stocked commercial ice cream in 4 flavors: vanilla, chocolate, strawberry, and butter pecan. These individual portions cost 10 cents, affordable on the 80-cent daily prison wage. The ready availability of multiple flavor options contradicted German experiences of standardized minimal provisions. Former Luftwaffe radioman Kurt Weber later recalled, "The first time I purchased ice cream at the camp store, I was asked which flavor I preferred." This simple question contained an entire philosophy foreign to Nazi Germany, the idea that even in wartime individual preference mattered. The contrast extended beyond the prison fences. German POWs watching American children with ice cream cones witnessed the democratization of luxury. Unlike Germany, where remaining sweets were reserved for elite party members or sold at exorbitant black market prices, American ice cream was accessible to all. Camp Hern records documented prisoner reactions during community farm work when they observed children purchasing 5-cent cones from neighborhood vendors, a scene unimaginable in wartime Germany. Perhaps most powerful was the casual nature of this abundance. Ice cream wasn't served as a special privilege, but as a routine dessert. The transformation happened not through calculated propaganda, but through simple exposure to normalcy, American style. Each creamy spoonful silently demolished the narratives that had sustained the Third Reich, replacing fear with a more dangerous weapon: the simple possibility of sweet abundance available to all. August 1945. Rural Georgia. The German prisoners worked steadily through the peach orchard, picking fruit destined for the Campbell Soup Company's canning facility. These agricultural work details, organized under the War Department's prisoner labor program, brought German POWs into direct contact with American civilian life. By late summer 1945, 198,000 prisoners had worked on American farms, processing plants and canneries, witnessing American production from within. For men raised in the rigid class hierarchies of the Third Reich, these work experiences revealed an America fundamentally different from Nazi caricatures. Former infantry Lieutenant Paul Kramer noted in his memoirs, "Working alongside American farmers, I discovered they owned their land, made individual decisions about crops, and sold to markets directly." This contradicted everything we had been taught about American agricultural slavery under Jewish capital. The American food system's scale astonished even technically sophisticated prisoners. Heinz Weber, a former Messerschmitt aircraft engineer, found himself working at a milk processing plant in Wisconsin, documenting the experience in letters home, partially censored but preserved in military archives. They pasteurize 75,000 gallons daily with completely automated equipment. The plant operates 24 hours, with minimal personnel. One American facility produces more than our entire censored district. These direct observations of American productivity demolished Nazi propaganda more effectively than any counter-information campaign. Local communities often developed unexpected relationships with German prisoners in their midst. Church groups, particularly Methodist and Lutheran congregations with German-American membership, organized visits to nearby camps. Military records from Camp Gordon, Georgia, documented a pattern repeated across America: local women's auxiliary groups bringing homemade cakes, pies, and cookies to Sunday services for prisoners. These simple acts of kindness toward enemy soldiers contradicted the dehumanization essential to sustained conflict. The Christmas of 1945, with the war officially ended but repatriation delayed by logistical challenges, saw an extraordinary outpouring from American communities. At Camp Shelby, Mississippi, local residents provided ingredients for traditional German Christmas cookies. The Hattiesburg American newspaper reported that Mrs. Eleanor Hyder, whose own son had fought in Europe, organized the community effort, explaining, "There's someone's boys too. War's over now." These civilian interactions proved particularly powerful in challenging Nazi racial ideologies. German prisoners confronted the uncomfortable reality that black American soldiers guarding them ate the same food, received the same pay, and wore the same uniforms as white soldiers, while German POWs from the master race worked as field hands. Military intelligence reports documented the psychological impact when prisoners observed Black Americans in positions of authority purchasing goods that had been unavailable in Germany for years. Oberleutnant Werner Schmidt, captured in North Africa and held at Fort McClellan, Alabama, wrote in a censored letter, "Yesterday I purchased cigarettes from a Negro store owner. He drives an automobile better than any owned by our regional party leader." This contradicts everything we were taught about racial hierarchy and capability. Camp censors flagged such observations as evidence of ideological fracturing among prisoners. By late 1945, military intelligence surveys documented significant attitudinal shifts. A confidential report titled "Denazification Through Exposure" concluded that 71% of prisoners working in agricultural settings showed substantially moderated political views compared to 54% in non-working camp environments. The report specifically cited direct observation of American economic functions as the primary factor in changed perspectives. Perhaps most powerful were the relationships formed during community work projects. When local children brought lemonade to German prisoners working field irrigation projects in California's Imperial Valley, the simple kindness demolished years of propaganda about American hatred. These small moments of human connection, a shared sandwich, a cold drink offered on a hot day, a farmer's wife preparing special meals for her Germans, accomplished what formal re-education programs never could. They made the enemy human again. Spring 1946. Bremen Harbor, Germany. The German prisoners disembarked from American transport ships, returning to a homeland transformed by defeat. The physical contrast was immediately apparent to waiting families. The returning men were well fed, many having gained weight in American camps, while German civilians showed the hollow-cheeked gauntness of prolonged hunger. Medical records documented the disparity. Returning POWs averaged 160 pounds, 9% above pre-capture weight, while civilian German males of comparable age averaged 132 pounds, reflecting severe caloric deficits since 1944. This physical disparity created immediate tension. Former Wehrmacht Sergeant Karl Müller described his homecoming, "My wife didn't recognize me at first. When I left in 1943, I weighed 145 pounds. I returned weighing 171. She had been surviving on 900 calories daily for months. The children stared at me as if I were a stranger. In many ways I was. The nutritional divide represented a deeper ideological fracture. Men who had witnessed American abundance returned to communities still believing Nazi narratives about Allied brutality. Former prisoners became unexpected ambassadors for American methods and values, their healthy bodies serving as living evidence, contradicting official propaganda. Military government surveys in the American occupation zone documented that families of returned POWs showed 67% higher approval ratings for occupation policies than the general population. Many returnees brought final gifts from American camps, Red Cross parcels containing coffee, chocolate, cigarettes, and canned goods that became treasured family resources. These parcels, standard farewell provisions, contained more luxury items than most German families had seen in years. Returning prisoners distributed these goods carefully, creating small moments of abundance amid devastation. Children who had forgotten chocolate's taste experienced it as a magical substance brought from an unimaginable America by fathers who described ice cream machines and steaks served to enemy prisoners. The knowledge these men carried proved more valuable than material goods. Former POWs disproportionately became entrepreneurs in post-war Germany, establishing businesses modeled on American systems they had witnessed firsthand. Economic surveys from 1949 to 1952 documented that 28% of new small businesses in the American zone were founded by former prisoners, despite representing only 8% of the adult male population. These men applied practical knowledge gained through camp work programs, modern food processing techniques, efficient distribution systems, and customer service approaches. Former Luftwaffe communications officer Heinrich Wagner established Bavaria's first self-service grocery in 1949, directly modeled on the Camp PX, where he had worked in Texas. Americans had solved problems we didn't know existed, he explained in a 1965 interview. The standardization, the efficient shelving, the psychology of customer choice, these systems created abundance through organization rather than through conquest. This transmission of American methods helped fuel West Germany's economic miracle. The men who had expected execution but received steak and ice cream became early advocates for the Marshall Plan. Having witnessed American productive capacity firsthand, they understood the potential benefits of American investment. Public opinion research conducted in 1948 showed that former POWs were 73% more likely to support American economic initiatives than the general population. As Cold War tensions divided Germany, former prisoners frequently referenced their American camp experiences when discussing competing systems. Those settled in West Germany shared stories of abundance that contradicted Soviet bloc propaganda. Those in East Germany often maintained silent knowledge that challenged official narratives. The ideological impact crossed generations. Children and grandchildren raised on stories of American ice cream amid deprivation carried these impressions forward, shaping decades of German-American relations. In retirement homes across Germany today, elderly men who once marched for Hitler occasionally share stories of their most profound wartime surprise, expecting a bullet but receiving a meal instead. The transformation that began with that first bewildering moment of survival, enemy soldiers offering food instead of execution, represents one of history's most powerful examples of conquest through kindness. The men who entered American captivity as Nazi warriors emerged as witnesses to an alternative vision of society, one measured not in territory conquered, but in ice cream served, not in enemies killed, but in enemies fed. Spring, 1945. Outside Leipzig, Germany, the Wehrmacht soldier raised his hands toward the sky, a white rag tied to his rifle. He had expected this moment for weeks, rehearsed it mentally 1,000 times, each scenario ending with an American bullet. Nazi propaganda had prepared him thoroughly. Americans took no prisoners, only trophies, finger bones, ears, gold teeth extracted from cooling corpses. As the American patrol approached, Hans Müller whispered final prayers. After 4 years fighting across 2 continents, death would arrive wearing an American helmet. The strange calm of certainty washed over him as the first American soldier reached him, weapon raised. "Cigarette?" the American asked in broken German, extending a pack of Lucky Strikes. This simple offer, a cigarette instead of execution, represented the first fracture in the edifice of lies that had sustained the Third Reich. By war's end, 3,097,691 German soldiers would experience similar moments of bewildering dissonance, expecting death but receiving humanity. Across collapsing Germany that spring, 891,000 German soldiers would surrender in April 1945 alone, each having been methodically prepared for American brutality. The Reich's final propaganda campaign had been brutally effective. Since Himmler's December 1944 order, information regiments distributed detailed accounts of alleged American atrocities, executions at Malmedy, an actual German crime against Americans cynically reversed, starvation camps in France, torture techniques supposedly employed during interrogations. Documents recovered from the Reich Ministry of Public Enlightenment revealed the calculated nature of these fabrications. One memorandum from March 1945 instructed descriptions of American brutality must emphasize physical suffering specifically, as this proves most effective in preventing surrenders. SS officers supplemented official propaganda with verbal briefings to combat units. Survivors later testified that officers described specific American execution methods with clinical precision, including detailed accounts of soldier mutilations. Lieutenant Werner Hoffmann, commanding a depleted company near Dresden, received official briefing materials showing photographs of American torture victims, actually concentration camp prisoners, with accompanying text describing how Americans executed officers immediately, while enlisted men faced prolonged interrogation, followed by starvation. Hoffman's unit of 87 men received exactly 12 bullets per soldier for their final defense, with explicit instructions to reserve the final round for themselves. The American counterintelligence report, German Surrender Expectations, June 1945, documented that 83% of captured Wehrmacht soldiers expected immediate execution, with 91% believing officers would face special treatment. Medical examinations of newly captured prisoners revealed physical manifestations of terror, elevated heart rates, averaging 125 beats per minute, acute stress responses, and instances of stress-induced mutism. Yet instead of execution squads, surrendering Germans encountered American processing procedures that began with the same question: "Are you hungry?" Military records from the First Army documented that standard capture protocol included immediate provision of K-rations, cigarettes, and medical attention. These initial moments of dissonance, the cigarette offered instead of a bullet, rations instead of restraints, medical treatment instead of torture, represented the first confrontation with an America fundamentally different from Nazi depictions. The psychology of this reversal was profound. As former Panzer Grenadier Carl Schmitt later testified, "We had constructed elaborate mental defenses against American brutality. Nothing prepared us for American kindness." This created a vacuum where our certainty had been. As spring sunshine melted winter snow, exposing the Wehrmacht's fallen, American mess tents were already serving hot meals to men who hours earlier had been shooting at them. The greatest psychological operation of the war had begun, achieved not through calculated design, but through simple, abundant food served to starving enemies. April 1945, Remagen Collection Point, Western Germany. The processing began immediately after capture. German prisoners stood in orderly lines as American soldiers distributed K-rations, small waxed cardboard boxes containing compressed foods that seemed miraculous to men who had subsisted on sawdust-supplemented bread for weeks. The crackers inside, although plain by American standards, contained more wheat than many Germans had consumed in months. The small chocolate bar, standard in every box, represented a luxury vanished from German experience since 1942. Wehrmacht Corporal Ernst Kramer later described his first American meal: "I expected interrogation, perhaps torture. Instead, they handed me a box of food and directed me to eat. When I opened it, I found cheese, chocolate, and coffee with real sugar. I had not seen sugar in 2 years. I thought it must be my final meal before execution." Processing records from Remagen show 17,000 prisoners processed within the first week of April 1945. Standard procedure included immediate medical examination, delousing with DDT powder, and provision of hot meals within 12 hours of capture. Army Medical Corps reports documented the physical condition of incoming prisoners: average weight 15 to 20% below standard, vitamin deficiencies evident in 62% of cases, and dental problems in 87%.